Hey there, everybody. Welcome. We are continuing our series on a man after God's own heart, the life of David in the Bible. And we're going to 2 Samuel chapter number 16 today. I hope that if you can, you'll turn there and read along with me. We have seen David now evacuate Jerusalem. Many of his followers are going with him, and Absalom has now moved into the city of Jerusalem. And so we're going to pick it up. We did learn about a lot of people yesterday. Let me see if I can zip back and look at all of these individuals. Ittai is the first person that we learned about. He's a Gittite that had recently arrived in Jerusalem, and he's going to stay loyal to David. Then Zadok the priest, as well as Abiathar, and then the sons of Zadok and Jonathan, Abiathar, and Ahimaaz. That's that guy's name. And then we learned about Ahithophel showed back up. And then I feel like there was one more person there. Let's see. Ittai, Zadok, Jonathan, Abiathar, Ahimaaz. Perhaps that was it. I guess that's all we needed to worry about. Today, we're going to see the return of some of these people, and that's why we're trying to get to know them as we go through. So, 2 Samuel 16, verse number 1, And when David was a little past the top of the hill, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him, with a couple of asses saddled, and upon them 200 loaves of bread, and 100 bunches of raisins, and 100 of summer fruits, and a bottle of wine. So Ziba, if you remember, is the caretaker, if you will, of Mephibosheth. He was a servant of King Saul, and Mephibosheth is one of Saul's grandsons, the son of Jonathan. He became crippled or lame on his feet at 5 years of age when a nurse running dropped him. And so here he is. He was a poor, crippled boy in this little town called Lodebar. And the king, wanting to do something nice for Jonathan, told Mephibosheth that he can have everything that Saul owned when he was ruling in Israel, and he told him he could eat at his table any meal that he wanted to. So David was incredibly generous to Mephibosheth. Well, then he told Mephibosheth, use Ziba and his family. They're going to be the ones that help you and that take care of all of this property for you. So this is who's showing up, Ziba, and he's showing up with this big care package of food. Okay? And the king said unto Ziba, What meanest thou by these? Now let me answer that question before Ziba does. Ziba's just trying to get in good with the king here. He's using this time of misfortune to better himself. He knows that David is likely going to be the one that comes out on top here, and so he is trying to get in David's good graces while he can. We would call that an opportunist. But here's what Ziba said, What meanest thou by these? And Ziba said, The asses be for the king's household to ride on. So David and his wives and children, perhaps they're all walking, and so he brought these donkeys for them to ride on. And the bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine, that such as be faint in the wilderness may drink. So he's acting like, I'm just trying to be good to you, king. And the king said, Where is thy master's son? Well, Ziba's master was Saul, and of course a son or a grandson is often referred to as a son. And so David's asking him, Where is Mephibosheth? And Ziba said unto the king, Behold, he abideth at Jerusalem. So I know I'm here, but my care, my master, the one I served, Mephibosheth, he's in Jerusalem. For he said, and now Ziba's claiming that this is what Mephibosheth said, Today shall the house of Israel restore me the kingdom of my father. So now Ziba's claiming that Mephibosheth is saying he's going to be king. Now, the reason that he thinks this is because there's this civil war, this internal family problem between David and Absalom. And so Mephibosheth thinks, hey, this is going to work out in my favor because these two are going to tear each other apart. And what the nation of Israel is going to do is say, you know what, enough with this nonsense. Let's put the family of Saul, the previous king. Let's put them back on the throne. And the only one to do that is Mephibosheth. So Ziba's claiming that Mephibosheth is hanging out in Jerusalem, waiting for the opportunity to be the next king. Then said the king to Ziba, this is David's response to what he just heard, behold, thine are all that pertained unto Mephibosheth. So David, upon hearing this news, says, you know what? Everything that I gave to Mephibosheth, it's yours. If that's what he's going to do to me, if he's going to stab me in the back like this, then I'm taking it all from him and I'm giving it all to you. And Ziba said, I humbly beseech thee that I may find grace in thy sight, my lord, O king. So Ziba's plan to be an opportunist and to get in there and get something for himself, it worked. He got what he was after. And so there you have it. So what's going on here? Well, already Ziba is no friend to David. He's just looking out for himself. And if Ziba's telling the truth about Mephibosheth, then Mephibosheth's just stabbed him in the back. I'm not going to spoil that. Whether or not Ziba's telling the truth, you'll just have to keep tuning in. Verse number 5. And when King David came to Bahurim, behold, thence came out a man of the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. He came forth and cursed still as he came. So David and his people, they approached this little town called Bahurim, and looking out the window of his house is this guy named Shimei. Now, he's from Saul's family, so you can imagine already, he doesn't like David very much. And so he comes out of his house and he's cursing the king. It's going to get worse. Verse number 6, and he cast stones at David and at all the servants of King David, and all the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. And thus said Shimei when he cursed, come out, thou bloody man, and thou man of Belial. The Lord hath returned upon thee all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose stead thou hast reigned. And the Lord hath delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom thy son. And behold, thou art taken in thy mischief, because thou art a bloody man. And so Shimei really lets David have it here. He comes out guns a-blazing, accusing David of the reason that Saul and Jonathan are dead, calling him a bloody man, cursing and swearing at him. So Abishai, he's not going to put up with this. Verse 9, then said Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, unto the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over, I pray thee, and take off his head. And Abishai would have. Abishai would have taken his sword and gone right up to Shimei and cut his head right off, and that would have stopped his cursing right there. And the king said, what have I to do with you, ye sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the Lord hath said unto him, curse David. Who shall then say, wherefore hast thou done so? So David says, look, you're not going to go cut his head off. The reason he's cursing me is because God's allowing him to curse me. And David probably believes that this is part of the chastisement of the Lord upon him for what he's done. And so if David allows his men to kill him, God's going to hold him accountable for having killed him. And so David says, excuse me, let him curse. You know, you're going to be criticized by people. If you try to do anything for God, for that matter, if you try to do anything at all, then you're going to be criticized. Someone said this, not exactly like this, and I don't know who the quote is attributed to, but if you wish not to be criticized, then say nothing, do nothing, stand for nothing. And no one will criticize you, except people will then criticize you for saying nothing, doing nothing, and standing for nothing. You're not going to escape criticism. Best thing to do is ignore it. Know that it's going to happen. Know that people are going to do it to you. Just let it go in one ear and out the other. Perhaps the Lord has ordained it to be so. You know, you're not perfect. Not everything you do is exactly right. Not everything you say is perfection. It's okay to receive criticism. Nothing wrong with that. You're going to be all right. We shouldn't be so sensitive that people can't criticize us or question us. And David here shows that and exemplifies that to us. Oh, where are we here? Verse number 11. And David said to Abishai, he's continuing here after this, let him curse, and to all his servants, behold, my son, which came forth of my bowels, seeketh my life. How much more now may this Benjamite do it? Let him alone, and let him curse, for the Lord hath bidden him. He says, look, my own son is trying to kill me. What do I care about this guy criticizing me? And that's another thing to consider. If someone's criticism of you ruins your day, perhaps your life is pretty amazing. You don't have bigger problems than that to concern yourself with. So if criticism is enough to impact your day, then you ought to thank God that that's how it is for you. A lot of folks have bigger fish to fry than whether or not somebody's talking mean about them. Verse number 12. It may be that the Lord will look on mine affliction, and that the Lord will requite me good for his cursing this day. Perhaps for me receiving the cursing, God will bless me in the future for it. And as David and his men went by the way, Shimei went along on the hill's side over against him, and cursed as he went, and threw stones at him, and cast dust. And the king and all the people that were with him came weary, and refreshed themselves there. Notice the difference. While being attacked verbally and with stones and dust, David doesn't let it bother him. In fact, he's tired, he needs a break, and while in Bahurim, he refreshes himself there. Could you say that about yourself? When you're being personally attacked and criticized, can you get some rest and take it easy and not let it bother you? That's what David's doing here. Now, we switch gears. We go back to Absalom, verse number 15. And Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with him. Remember, Ahithophel is the counselor of David. He's the one who gives him advice. We're going to see how helpful that advice was when we get to the end of the chapter. And it came to pass when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, was come unto Absalom, that Hushai said unto Absalom, God save the king, God save the king. He's the one I was missing from earlier. I knew there was someone from chapter 15 we forgot about, and it's Hushai. So Hushai, if you recall, wanted to stay with David, and David said, no, if you stay with me, you're going to be a burden unto me. What I want you to do instead is go to Absalom and be a double agent. Pretend to be on his side, but I want you to find out everything that's going on there, and then I want you to let Abiathar and Ahimaaz know, and they'll get the message to me. And so that's what Hushai's doing here. He's being disingenuous when he says to Absalom, God save the king. He's calling Absalom the king of Israel. And Absalom said to Hushai, is this thy kindness to thy friend? Why wentest thou not with thy friend? So Absalom knows that Hushai and David are close. And so he asks him right away, wait a minute, why are you being so nice to me? I thought my father was your friend. Why didn't you go with him? And Hushai said unto Absalom, nay, but whom the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel choose, his will I be, and with him will I abide. And again, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son? As I have served in thy father's presence, so will I be in thy presence. So Hushai is trying to convince Absalom that he believes that it's the Lord's will and the people's will, that Absalom be the king if that's what's going to happen. And he convinces him that the loyalty he possessed for his father David, he will transfer to Absalom as he becomes the king. Now, Absalom is going to seek the advice of Ahithophel. And if you remember, David's already prayed that God would confound the counsel of Ahithophel. And we're going to see it take place right now. Then said Absalom to Ahithophel, give counsel among you what we shall do. And Ahithophel said unto Absalom, Go in unto thy father's concubines, which he hath left to keep the house. And all Israel shall hear that thou art abhorred of thy father. Then shall the hands of all that are with thee be strong. So they spread Absalom a tent upon the top of the house. And Absalom went in unto his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. So we'll stop there and read this last verse in a second. What a wicked, terrible, evil thing to do. Absalom here is taking the concubines of the previous king. Well, David still is the king. He's not been dethroned just yet. And he sleeps with them. He's doing that to defile the image of the previous king, to add injury to insult, and then also to basically prove himself to be the bigger man. All he's done is bring great immorality into the nation of Israel. How are you going to start your new kingdom? I'm going to be immoral with the concubines of the previous king. That just didn't happen. Concubines were like wives in the sense that the relationship was the same, but if I'm not mistaken, the financial obligation wasn't quite the same. And so this is how Absalom decides to declare himself the more powerful man. And then this final verse of the chapter, and by the way, this was Ahithophel's advice. It's horrible advice. It's terrible advice. It couldn't be worse. And so already David's prayers are being answered to mess with the counsel of Ahithophel. And notice how this advice contrasts to what is usual. And the counsel of Ahithophel, which he counseled in those days, was as if a man had inquired at the oracle of God. So was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. The Bible says that Ahithophel's counsel was as though you had asked God himself up until now. And God changes his counsel, and he gives David's prayer credence, and Ahithophel's now going to advise Absalom very poorly so that David can return to the throne of Israel. All right, what a chapter. It's wild and wacky out there, isn't it? Thanks so much for watching. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.